My colleagues have abandoned me.
Oh, no.
So,
Do you want to stand here or use the hand mic?
yeah, I'm just going to introduce.
Yeah.
So, our presentation isn't as technical as Stephen's. Ours is more about access outcome, project management, and how we created Replay, which is a UK's archive video collections in libraries across the UK. So my name is Nicky Williams. I am project manager or heritage programme delivery manager at the BFI National Archive. Many thanks for having us here today. These are my colleagues Emma and Dylan, who will be joining me in a minute. Many of you would have heard about Heritage 22 already from previous colleagues that have spoken at FIAT about the technical processes, the mass video digitisation of over 60 years of videotape across the UK with our partners. There were 7 strands. It was a very complex programme, 5 years extended due to COVID, and I came in the last 2 years in October 21. What we're going to talk about today specifically is video digitisation and how you go from video digitisation to an access outcome and all the rights that are involved with that. So we're here to celebrate. We finished in December 23. The 13 regional partners that were involved across the country, our 14 Replay Libraries founding partners who helped us create Replay, and the suppliers involved across the UK and internationally as well that helped us achieve what we had. So I'm going to start with Dylan. Oh, start with the trailer. I forgot about that. This is the exciting bit.
3, 2, 1.
Technology offers opportunities beyond anyone's wildest dreams.
It's all in here.
You'll be given lots of information.
Education is the opportunity to use your talents.
Get wise. Talk teletext.
The thing is, you get people dressing up like Hollywood stars.
Sam had a magic ball.
Don't throw water over the fire. The effects can be devastating.
The fact of life is, I want to see a society where freedom and democracy flourish.
The way forward was definitely digital.
Goodbye. How could I possibly go on before Ted Rogers? Okay, I've been told to stand in the light. Can you see me? Yep. So hi everyone, I'm Dylan Cave. I'm the Collections Development Manager. I'm part of the curatorial team. Thank you. Basically, my team are involved in thinking about how we bring materials into the National Collection, but we also think about our collection's appraisal activity. Heritage 2022 is very much an appraisal activity. So I'm just going to give you a very kind of top-level summary of how we went about making the decisions of what we should actually be selecting for preservation. Where do you begin if you're given a project like this to digitize what was in total 100,000 videotape items? This is an image from one of our vaults, Vault 2. I think that there's, you can see one row here. I think there's 24 in that vault, which gives you a sense of the scale of the amount of videotape that we actually hold. If you're going to digitize up to 100,000, where do you begin? Do you begin in the bottom right-hand corner and just work along? You can reach your target very straightforwardly there in a 5-year project. But in doing so, what have you missed? So we were very keen to kind of pull together a matrix to make sure that we were spending public money in the right way and making sure that we were delivering on some of our kind of agreed outcomes. These are some of the things that we were talking to. So at risk, I was very fortunate to come to FIAT in Dubrovnik in 2019, where our colleague Charles gave a wonderful presentation about where we were at in our Heritage 2022 kind of project. And alongside that, he was very kind of clear. I'll do a very summary of his detailed talk there, but basically we were aware that not only videotape was at risk, but also the machinery used to kind of play it back, and of course the skill set in order to be able to kind of retrieve images from videotape. To a certain extent, we approached this project that all videotape was, at risk, but within that we understood that there were certain formats that were at greater risk as well, so that was one of the things that we were kind of toying with. Culturally significant. I'm not going to go into too much detail about how we kind of ascertained cultural significance, other than to say that we were working with our regional and national partners, each working to our respective collecting policies, where we kind of understand what we understand as cultural significance as it relates to our kind of individual purposes. That was another part of the matrix. A colleague of mine, Mark Dogood, who was also part of the curatorial team, is keen to emphasize, and I should have written it down here, that alongside significance, we were also interested in representativeness, if that word exists, basically to summarize the idea that we wanted to get a real wide understanding of what videotape as a format represented, not just perhaps in the broadcasting sector, but how videotape may have been used to transform how perhaps artists, filmmakers, and their culture of moving image making was transformed by videotape formats in the 80s and 90s. Likewise, things like non-profit organizations, sponsored filmmaking, etc., etc. So that representativeness was very important as well. We worked with regional and national partners to deliver 100,000 videotape items to be digitized. From the BFI, there was 50,000 of that. We wanted to make sure that we were digitizing the best material. So if we had a choice between a 1-inch and a corresponding VHS, to make sure that we were selecting the 1-inch to digitize, and some of our automated tools were helping us to kind of make that. And also we wanted to make sure that we were avoiding duplication, that piece about the public person and the public money, making sure that when we were doing 100,000 things, we were doing 100,000 different things to make sure the money was well spent. This is a shot of one of our film vaults with one of our benefactors, so John-Paul Getty, inside our conservation centre. These figures have already been presented by Lisa in previous presentation, if you were able to attend that. There is a slight difference in the numbers, but you don't get a prize if you spot what it is, unfortunately. They are also kind of suspiciously round numbers as well, I always suspect, but it does give you a sense, of course, of the scale of the material that's in our national collecting organisations. The colour codification here is basically moving image at the top in white, in the middle in yellow. That's our special collections material, and our library materials are in blue here. I'm presenting this slide for two reasons. One, to re-emphasize that point about the scale in which that we had to work with. How do you actually start to select material when you're dealing with numbers of this size? And of course, we were working alongside regional and national partners as well, so it's even greater than the numbers you see here. But also, I think that there's a related point about the kind of skill set that was coming up through kind of curatorial and related teams, and about how the digitisation project may have kind of enhanced that skill set within our respective teams, so that we can actually think about other aspects of our collection and use that good learning around that. So back to that question, how do you kind of start understanding what your videotape collections are, and where do you start prioritising what you should digitise? We started off the project with an audit, which meant working in partnership with archives across the regions and nations and with us. We asking ourselves a series of questions. I won't go through each of them here. The point is that we were asking a range of metrics in order a range of questions in order to kind of build up a matrix of how we might understand a collection. Would it be organised by, for example, the source of material, where it came from? Perhaps rights was a good way to kind of understand this material together, or perhaps kind of condition of material as well. So trying to understand it in that way. Once we had kind of brought all of this together and come up with our final list of collections across BFI and our regional and national partners, we had hundreds and hundreds of different collections. We then needed to work out against this matrix which of those were meeting our categories that I've just laid out to you, the at-risk category, cultural significance, representativeness, and which of the collections would start to surface at the top as kind of combining all of these things, and it would be those collections that we would kind of create as our top set, as the collections that we would start digitising from. I'm not going to give you an example of what a top set collection would be, because each of the collections that surfaced to the top had a myriad of reasons as to why they were surfacing to the top. I'll give you an example of what didn't make it as a top set collection, just to give you some idea. In the BFI, we have a collection of VHSs that were donated to us by colleagues across the organisation. Sight and Sound, the film review magazine, perhaps, or BFI distribution arm, when they had a VHS publishing arm, and they are VHSs of classic movies, Citizen Kane's, your Third Man's, etc., etc. Given that we have the film material and digitizations of them now, that VHS collection would not be something that we would prioritise for digitization. It's a very obvious point, but it's just worth stating. This is how this was all working. When we got to the top set collections, we then had to work out, and my team was leading on how we then dove into each of those collections to actually extract the information, do the curatorial research in order to pick the actual objects within there. This is an example related to what Stephen was talking about earlier in terms of a good data set of material that we could work with and could kind of select from in terms of our online kind of database. But obviously metadata comes in different forms, and we also had to do, in the absence of kind of information, or where some of the data was incomplete or needed checking, we would have to go to paperwork. Of course, in the absence of paperwork, you're then in another level of metadata. And here are some examples, snapshots taken from my team of some of the actual physical extraction of metadata that we had to get from actually taking the videotapes out of the boxes and actually listing it. Again, stating the obvious. I think one of the interesting things about this is that we were quite fortuitous when we would start planning this process. We thought, with the collections that we don't have enough metadata, should we be sat at our desk and have tapes of material come to us and kind of start creating our list that way? But my colleagues suggested, why don't we go into the vaults with our phone cameras and just take all the images? It was a fortuitous thing. This happened in the months before the pandemic. We had our library of images. It was great because it meant that we could continue with the project as we were staying at home, working from home, because we captured those images. I must confess it wasn't particularly planned. It was just luck, but we went with it. Once we had extracted our metadata, we then kind of were able to do a little bit of research where necessary. I think this is an important kind of point to emphasize. Across a 5-year project, trying to digitize 50,000 items for our own collection, there's no way you can watch absolutely everything. So we had to take a choice and kind of, again, working with that collections model, understand the materials that we wanted to understand as a curated layer, where we wanted to go into a little bit more depth, and something that we called the well, which was basically a top-level understanding of collections that kind of people could kind of dive into. This is an example of a research piece, perhaps slightly self-serving because it relates to kind of BFI activity. This is actually an audio tape, but believe me, there was also a corresponding videotape. This is just a piece of research that a member of my team would have done to kind of understand more about a series of lectures, for example, that we did relating to, that were hosted under our Ernest Lindgren kind of banner. So we gathered our metadata, we'd done our research, we were then able to kind of do our selections to kind of point to the materials that we wanted to digitize, but we did need a little bit of automation to kind of help us that. I'm not going to talk you through this slide other than to say this kind of very basic API, which we were punching into kind of spreadsheets, worked. Very, very basic, very, very crude, but it was delivering what it is that we wanted. Basically, our unique identifiers were in the left-hand column. And basically, these kind of APIs were pulling back very kind of rudimentary information. If we were getting a value statement, then frankly, that meant that we were probably, the item that we were selecting possibly had a pre-existing digitization or may have existed on a film element, in which case we would no longer select it. In the bottom two examples, there was none of that kind of clash there, so we could go ahead with the digitization. I'm going to stop now, just finish with one last slide to give you a kind of a case study. I think one of the values that I think of this project, and I think one of the things that's going to come out in the next bit is the difference between selecting that my team were doing for preservation and what was coming out of access. Some of the images here weren't necessarily selected in the final moment, but it gives you a snapshot of what this company were doing. In the 1980s, they had a commission to do documentaries about cinema for Channel 4, basically, and they ran to several series. Not only did we have kind of original broadcast masters, but we also hold some of the interviews that were conducted that kind of fed into that, including kind of much longer interviews with some of the people you see here. We feel that the kind of testimony that they were given there, the issues that we're raising, this kind of project is great because it's allowed to give access to a kind of a much more diverse range of voices that we can kind of now preserve thanks to this project. I think I will pause there and pass over to my colleague, Nicky. Okay.
So my bit, on my part, I came in October 21 for the final 2 years of the programme. It was meant to finish in 22, that's why it was called Heritage 22, but with COVID, it had to be extended. So when I came in, I had a background in TV production and a lot of experience in programme management, but this was my first job in an archive, and understanding the complexities of this world has been huge for me. I was given 3 objectives for those 2 years. To bring HD2 back on track, because post-COVID, across all 7 strands, we'd got behind. To deliver HD2 to the agreed spec and time on budget. And to deliver the access outcome, which was the library product, across the UK in 2,000 libraries. And that was funded by various funders, mostly the lottery, but also Esme Fairbairn. We had a name, BFI Replay. We had a logo. We had a content strategy. We had a set of KPIs. We had an amazing array of partners, the Regions and Nations Film Archives, some of those are here today, and the founding Replay Libraries Network. A huge wealth of experience and expertise, and we had around at that point 64,000 digitised open source files, if I get this right, Stephen, FFV1 Matroska files, which of course, as Dylan pointed to, it couldn't all be viewed. We didn't have one single information management system to exchange the vast amounts of data and objects and information that was exchanging across the partners. We didn't have a minimal viable product, and we had no content management system at that point to manage the back end of what was going to become Replay. And we had to deliver this all by December 23. I'm not going to really talk too much about the actual videotape digitisation programme because we're not here today, but needless to say, it was complex. We were dealing with lots of rare formats, multiple suppliers and partners, and the journey's been revelatory to the BFI and our partners and suppliers, I would say. It was in parallel to us having to develop Replay and the access outcome, this videotape digitisation work was still going on. It still is now, today, for all of my colleagues. So as well as me asking them to help us get this product, Replay, in libraries, they also had to deal with all the complexities of this continued work. Maintaining quality control, ingesting of the content, and Stephen and his team developing automated solutions to deal with all of this. And from a project management side, from my side, it was how do you maintain the momentum of the partnerships? How do you share ongoing learnings and of a programme of 5 years? It's quite a huge undertaking. And during the last 5 years, a lot has changed from when the programme was scoped to where we are now. A lot has changed for our partners. The rapid progress and adaptation to new technologies and processes, digital standards and technical requirements, the rapid obsolescence of the hardware, which Charles Farrell has been central to, and the slow loss of the associated skill sets. We're in a very different place from 2017. Technology had changed, suppliers had changed, teams and people have moved, importantly, and there's a real question for us there around knowledge exchange and sharing and how you pass on knowledge. We all as partners have faced multiple challenges, and the sector, and we've all had to adapt and work through the legacy of, let's say it, Brexit and COVID, which has meant a lot for us all as organisations, the sector, and most importantly, the people within our organisations. So when reflecting with my colleagues for today's presentation, I asked them, if we started again now, what would we do differently? And in the context of the presentation, has automation been the only solution to the challenges we faced during a programme as complex as this? And hindsight is a great gift. So what would we do differently now to go from that digitisation to actually in the libraries? With multiple workflows, data spreadsheets and information being passed around. I've estimated, I asked Mark this morning, Mark Duguid, who owns the content strategy, our curator, and he's told me that 92 spreadsheets have been exchanged between the BFI and partners, our RNA partners, whilst developing the content and the metadata for replay. And I've estimated that all of this information has moved around a set of more than 60 people, both internally and externally. We are many. This is just a map of, I call them my blobby maps, a map of all the people involved around replay. So for each of our strands, we sort of obviously map out who and where, and it's across BFI as well as external to our partners. And, we are many. There's many types, different personalities within that. Some of us are planners from above and down. I'm always said I'm a big sort of picture person. Some of us are detailed and up. Some of us are creatives. Some of us are technical. Some of us are detailed people. So we've needed to have an agile approach. It's been very collaborative, but a lot of stakeholders to manage and look after during the process. So my reflection has been we couldn't have done this without our partners and our stakeholders and our suppliers and the teams that I work with at the BFI. People and relationships have been key to this. There's been a lot of unscoped challenges that's been huge for the partnership, and through those changing scopes we've had to flex and we've had to work agilely at times against a governance structure which is not agile. And so for me, the huge success and strength of the programme has been the partnerships, and trust has been key in all of that. And for many of us, we've had to negotiate moving into, a much more hybrid working methodology as well. So I just wanted to include this quote because I still feel that although automation has helped us hugely in the programme, that human interaction and debate, of which we've had many, have been key. So here we are today. Emma's going to talk about how we got it into the libraries, the next stage. But it is out there. We have over 10,000 pieces of content on the platform now. More to go. It's been a huge achievement with many people involved. On reflecting, using automation, it has helped hugely. And these are some of the things on reflection where we might, if we were scoping this again, we think that probably AI and automation could help us even more in the future. But the human intervention, and particularly around library and onboarding, which Emma will talk about, but the human intervention is always required in some of these processes. So this is Andy Wright, He's my project manager for videotape digitisation. He's got a slightly manic look on his face here. This was the last batch of videotapes going out of the National Archive in September. And Andy and I had a chat and reflections for today. For us, these are our key reflections. The scoping and the relationships are key. Consistent programme management is really important. Over a 5-year programme, that's really hard to maintain in terms of knowledge. Everyone in the delivery cycle, it's really important to understand the content, as we were saying. A lot of this stuff we can't, we haven't been able to watch. So producing content and trigger warnings, etc., is really hard. Giving ourselves the reflection time to review key decisions and the legacy of those decisions in the future, particularly when creating an access outcome. And testing and reviewing the effectiveness of our information systems and how we talk to each other. The automation of workflows is hugely impactful and significant, but the requirement for human intervention at some point will always be needed. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicky. Just thing. So mine's all about human intervention because I'm Director of Collections, Learning and Engagement at the BFI, but this is a relatively new post. I've been in it 3 weeks. I'm actually here as the previous head librarian, and I led up the team that got BFI Replay into the UK public libraries. So I'm going to talk you through how we did that. First of all, what's the question? Well, why libraries? Early on in the creation of BFI Replay, when we first began looking at how we were going to give public access to the thousands upon thousands of digitised videotape that you've heard about this morning, we knew that we wanted to do something different with how we engage people with the screen heritage of their nation and reach audiences that we'd never reached before. We wanted to take the stories that we were discovering via digitisation of these at-risk videotapes and place them back in the places and communities where they were from. And nothing says place and community quite like your local library. My screen heroine, Catherine Hepburn, once asked, what in the world would we do without our libraries? Well, what indeed? I am biased because I'm a professional librarian. Public libraries in the UK, as I'm sure they are in your countries, are one of the few free, safe, accessible spaces for all. They give democratic access to all the wondrous stories that are held inside their doors, and they are the beating heart of communities where people can come together for connection and a shared sense of place. The very communities that up till now the BFI has struggled to interact with in a meaningful manner. Communities that hadn't had the opportunity to understand their own screen heritage because it wasn't something they knew was out there to begin with. BFI Replay was going to fix all that, adding another level of wondrous stories to those public libraries with a platform that is exclusively designed for their spaces, and most importantly of all, connecting our collections with the people that they are about. So, how did we do it? We were never going to design and launch BFI Replay without the input of the very librarians that work across the 3,700 plus public libraries in the UK. A lot of time and effort was directed towards developing a small network of founding partner libraries from all 4 nations of the UK who could give us insights into the services they run, the communities they work with, and the digital services they already offered, who we could go to with iterations of the platform in the early design phases and ask what worked and what didn't. They helped us with the early user testing of Replay in their libraries with the very people and communities we were designing it for, welcoming us in person, often with tea and cake, and helping us hold focus groups and user workshops. So much valuable feedback was gathered from these interactive sessions that we would not have gotten simply from analysing the user data of the platform. When we finally launched Replay nationally in March of this year, the platform was in pretty good shape, and we were confident we had a service that the libraries not only wanted, but they could use in a meaningful way in the work that they do with their visitors. Also, during the development and pre-launch phase, we were able to test our assumptions with our partner network on how we were actually going to get all 3,700 libraries signed up to have BFI Replay as part of their offer. For unfortunately, with the exception of Northern Ireland, public libraries in the UK are not all one joined-up network. They don't share an IT system, and they don't have a centralised way of delivering digital services in their libraries. So we soon discovered that if we were going to get in every library in the nation, we were going to have to devote significant people resource to get there. An AI algorithm wasn't going to help us with this bit. We reached out to national organisations such as Libraries Connected, the Reading Agency, who work with libraries all year round and helped us tap into the connections they already made. We talked to the British Library, who have developed their own network of public libraries and got involved in their online training programme, giving webinars about BFI Replay. We asked our founding partner libraries to reach out to their professional networks and colleagues in other libraries to get them to sign up. Our marketing colleagues designed a social media campaign, made a fantastic trailer, which you've already seen, and began to advertise the service online. And our communication colleagues planned a national press campaign, which saw senior TV curator, Lisa Kerrigan, appear on national and regional news bulletins talking about the road to replay. And because I have a face for radio, I was sat in a studio at the BBC for an hour, being interviewed on dozens of regional radio programmes, one after the other, telling all the listeners to go to their local library and ask their librarians to sign up. All these human efforts have paid off, because 7 months on from our national launch, BFI Replay is live in 1/3 of libraries across England, Wales and Scotland, and we're live in all the libraries in Northern Ireland, because, as I say, they have a joined-up public library network. And whilst there is still a bit of a way to go in reaching the full 3,700, with us up and running in so many already, we have been able to start gathering meaningful data on how replay is being used, and most importantly, what people are learning about their screen heritage from it, which is enabling us to begin to reshape and rethink how we measure and evaluate the public's engagement with our collections, and how we can begin to change the narrative at the BFI on what is meant by success in this area. BFI Replay, by its design, is not going to deliver huge numbers right from the start. It will build slowly as a go-to resource in local libraries, and it's no less important or seen as successful because of that. The audiences it already is delivering are people that have never interacted with the digitised material of their regional and national moving image archives. Replay is helping us tell the story of the nation's screen heritage in a different way, and it's helping us as an organisation to work differently in how we deliver public access and also how we value that access, making the argument that 10 people engaging with the BFI and the work we do is as valuable as 10,000 people engaging with us if that engagement is meaningful. So what other lessons have we learnt from the project? And I should point out, as a professional librarian, I'm legally obliged to always include a still of Katharine Hepburn playing a librarian on screen. So that's why she's there helping save where a computer has failed. So what have we learned? Humans, as you've heard from Nicky, humans are definitely still required for engagement with our digitised moving image collections. We would have gotten nowhere without the partnerships we made with the librarians across the country. And it's from these partnerships that we learned we needed to invest more than just the Replay platform itself to support the meaningful engagement these collections generate. Workshops, study guides, and webinars are all things we didn't know we needed to do at the start of the journey, but we are now in the process of delivering. Another thing we've learned, and this will not come as a surprise to anyone, is it's very difficult to balance what needs to be selected for preservation purposes and what appeals to audiences for access purposes. Depending on which emphasis your digitisation programme has, will greatly affect the selection work that goes on at the beginning of it. And when you can't find that perfect balance between preservation and access, and you have to lead with the former because that's what we are mandated to do as archives, it will invariably mean you have to get creative with how you do the latter. Finally, we have learned that there is no perfect solution to that eternal conundrum of how you can provide mass access to the digitised collections we all hold. But you can keep trying all the same. You develop the access and engagement platform that you are capable of delivering, even if it's still a restricted kind of access and engagement, knowing that you are able to build upon it in the future. So whilst BFI Replay might be the end point for Heritage 2022, it's just the beginning for how we might engage with audiences in the future. Thanks.
Thank you so much, all three of you. It's a very inspiring project, and it's very nice to hear how you reach people through libraries. We're running a bit late. I didn't want to cut you off because it was such an interesting talk, but I just want to ask, we are going to lunch, so we're not going to do a long question session, but maybe there's one question that just cannot wait. I see one over there. Maybe we can just have one question, a very good one.
And then,
come and step over here.
Yeah.
You can see.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, you can talk to us at lunch.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Simon from FIAT. But just a question. I live in a very rural area in Wales, and just checked some statistics. There's about 25% of the UK population live in rural areas with no access to local libraries. How do you reach that part of the population, that's quarter of the population?
That's a really good question, and that is for our next phase of engagement work with the collections at the BFI. That would be we have a project that we're going to be launching soon in our next kind of like phase of collection engagement work called Our Screen Heritage, and that's where we will be looking at what other mechanisms we can create or build upon to reach those people that aren't able to get to local libraries or don't even have a local library service. This was very much like phase one, first iteration of how we can do things differently. And it's for us now, as I just said, kind of like to build upon where are we still not reaching. Libraries were first, we first worked, the idea for going into libraries was very much also what we were talking with the government at the time in 2017 about creating unique selling points for local libraries when they needed to kind of like bounce back from years of like funding cuts and everything. So we worked with government on their white paper, and that's when we just kind of like worked together and thought, actually creating something that is only accessible in libraries will be a driver to those libraries, but we absolutely recognise there's still people that can't even get to libraries. So that's like our next phase of delivery. So maybe we'll be back here in a few years' time telling you how we've done that part. But I won't be, because I'm not a librarian anymore, apparently.
Thanks very much. We hope to see you back, though.
Oh, yeah.
Librarian or not. I think it's time to go to lunch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for being here.